It was Monday night in Atlanta, typical summer, and we had friends over, and we were in the hot tub, and she had her martini, as she would say, her Cosmo. She leaned over the hot tub, and we felt like she may be getting cold water in her face, which was, typical, and the hot tub went into the pool. After a few minutes, actually probably a few seconds, I'm like, okay, something's wrong here. And when I turned her around, I knew something was wrong. We later learned that she had a massive brain aneurysm. She was gone in that second. Resilience is something we don't come into the world with. It's not a character trait. It's not something that we're born with, or whether we're good or bad about it. We have to develop it. And the only way we develop it is to really accept these challenges. So just being able to accept them and know that you're exactly where you need to be. You're experiencing those challenges, and they're here to make you stronger, not break you, is what I believe.
Rob Swymer, great to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too, my friend. Been a while.
Yeah, it has been a little while, but we met quite a while ago, Rob. Back, I was at a startup as a reseller for Splunk. You were a major account sales rep at Splunk. We worked together, had great times working together, getting into new accounts, and then you went on, had quite a career at Splunk, and then things have changed quite a bit for you, and now you've got a kind of a new life, a new brand of things that you're doing. And something happened, and I think there have been a number of things looking at your background that kind of led to where you are today. But some major life-changing events, and then has gotten to you into this new space of what you called physical intelligence. And that really intrigued me. What is physical intelligence, and am I physically intelligent? I don't know. I'm not mentally intelligent, so we'll see if I'm any better physically.
You and me both, man.
But before we dive into that, I want to dive more into what got you here. And you've written a book about this. You've developed, I think, really strong resilience and an attitude of gratitude. And just watching your life transformation for me has been amazing and very inspirational. And I want to share that with all the listeners.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Everybody has a story, Rob, I'm no different. Everybody should write a book, I always say. A regular guy here that went through his share of stuff and come out the other side. And I learned a lot through that process of what I would call transformation. I'm always in transformation. And what I really did, the difference that kind of changed everything was I became a student of my game. I was always learning new products and what's the next shiny object.
That's
And,
right.
we know the deal, right? We bounce from company to company and, learn new products, new ways to sell. But I wasn't really a student of me, my game. And you mentioned some life events. Of course, the life event that rocked me was the loss of Bonnie, my first wife, in 2013 to a brain aneurysm suddenly.
Yeah, do you mind taking us back to that? And I was just watching a video, a TED Talk where you were talking about that, and boy, it was hard even listening to it because it brought me back to when I heard of this moment. But man, so it was July 29th, 2013.
Yeah, so that's when it happened, exactly. We took her off life support on the 31st, and she took her last breath a few days later. It was Monday night in Atlanta, typical summer, and we had friends over, and we were in the hot tub, and she had her martini, as she would say, her Cosmo. And, she leaned over the hot tub, and we felt like she may be getting cold water in her face, which was, typical. And the hot tub went into the pool. And after a few minutes, actually probably a few seconds, I'm like, okay, something's wrong here, and over there. And when I turned her around, I knew something was wrong. So we later learned that she had a massive brain aneurysm. She was gone in that second. And that changes your world. And people that are listening, I'm sure can relate to loss in their life. If you live long enough, you have loss in your life. Losing a spouse, losing a child is top two that really rocks you. And I think for me, it was a life changing experience, and it really brought me into a new trajectory. And brought me to where I am today because through that process, Rob, it was crazy. It was like this just kept haunting me is why was I left behind, and if you met Bonnie, she was a force of nature for both women and men. You couldn't when she walked in the room, you had to stop and look at her, and her energy was so palatable, so strong. And, you know, I felt like there was a robbery there. I'm like, well, why am I here? I should have been the one to go, if anybody, right? We just had our first grandson 6 months prior. But those life events rock you, and you have a choice to deal with them in so many different ways. I had been sober, what, 20 years when that happened. So there were people that were surrounding me and giving me love and giving me the support I needed because they didn't want me to go back into that dark place that I was in years ago. And frankly, I never even thought about doing that. The long story short is I came out of this experience even stronger. And my motto every day is that I have moved forward with Bonnie, and we feel her presence every day, and I live my life in tribute to her every day. And I don't get it perfect, but that's my goal. So when I changed the words and changed how I labeled the experience and how I identified with the experience, everything changed, which is what you probably felt in that TEDx. Was I wanted to spread that message of experience, strength, and hope that, the worst day of your life, can catapult you into something that can be life changing as well for you.
Yeah, it's an incredible story, Rob, and I'm so happy that you came out of it with the strength and resilience that you've developed. I want to go
Thanks.
back and explore why you were able to react that way. And I think there's some formation that took place. And you mentioned, 20 years sober. That obviously was another life changing event that you went through. And what got you to that point that you needed to, find that sobriety um, was also moments in your life that I think led to this. Can we go can
Yeah,
we go way back? I've never talked to you about your childhood, Rob. What
yeah,
was I know about my little Rob growing up, but what was your little Rob?
yeah, yeah. I feel like I should have a couch here. But look, you know that my message to the world is that I'm very vulnerable, and I don't hold anything back. If I'm going to impact people's lives, then I want to do that for good. I want to make sure they understand everything about me. But my childhood really wasn't that bad. I mean, I was lower middle class outside of Boston, and I had a good childhood. I had everything I needed. I was sort of grown up as a lonely child, only child, because my two brothers were very much older than me. So I had good parents. I had a great dad. I was very, very close to my dad. My mom was very controlling and very image conscious, and she pushed me and pushed me and pushed me. That was her role, to get me to understand life on life's terms. But I held back a lot. I had a lot of issues growing up with. I had Tourette syndrome. I was diagnosed at 10 years old. That manifested into bullying and being a little bit ostracized, and just people trying to understand that I have a minor case, right? I don't verbalize being in sales for 40 years. I mean, obviously, but I'm very fortunate I don't verbalize, but
I was going to
but
say
I still have the.
I have the kid friendly YouTube's rating, so I got to keep that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, you won't have a problem today. But so that was one of the first things I dealt with in building my resilience, if you will. We didn't even know I was doing it. And then, growing up in school was not really my thing. I was a horrible, horrible student. I found out that I had severe learning disabilities in reading and math, and I was in that third, fourth group, the one that was by the teacher, and I really struggled, and barely got through high school. I got through high school, I think, because of my extracurricular activities. I was a singer and an actor, and I played basketball and golf. I did as much as I could. I was the key club president. I sort of kept busy, and my mom, I think, and my dad just kept me busy, to kind of get me going with all this because with Tourette's, ADHD, and all these things that weren't even diagnosed then, right? I was just off the wall. So I consider myself kind of a late bloomer because I got to college. I did get into college. Actually, golf helped me get into college, and the coach there, and basketball. And I got into college, and I ended up doing pretty good in college, and actually making the dean's list, and actually graduating, doing pretty well. I was a solid, average student. But during college, I met the fraternity and that lifestyle, and I hadn't taken a drink, my whole life until second year of college. Yeah, yeah, it's a crazy story because I never really wanted to because I was, that athlete. I wanted to be at peak state even then, not even knowing what that meant, right? I just wanted to be, fit and in a good way. So I met the fraternity, and you go to that first fraternity party and you get the red Solo cup and the kegs in the middle of the room, and it's like have fun, and so I started my journey with alcohol that night, and I never really looked back. I really accelerated quickly. I had the gene; it was in my family, and all of my cousins, it was all over. So, but I didn't know that. I didn't know what it was. I was very uneducated, but it took me on a spiral for the next decade or so, and. I was a functioning alcoholic. I was successful in business. I had everything I needed except the time with my family that I gave up, yeah, and the presence that I gave up with my family that I'll never get back. And those are things I can't control. That just move forward, right? But that event with my son at the time, my son's first birthday party ended up to be a keg party, and it was just not a good scene, not a good thing, and I talk about God moments a lot in my life. If you ever heard me speak on stage, I always mention God moments, or however your higher power or force bigger than you, however you want to identify with that. But there are moments in the universe that you can't control that come to you. And the day after that party, I finally called AA, the hotline, and the woman answered the phone, and you take the test. They give you like, I don't know, 10 questions or 5 questions, and it's like, you're not gonna pass that test, right? You're not the I tried to pass it a few times, but that night, that morning, I did not. So I asked, where I could get to a meeting, and I was living outside of Boston at the time, and I'll never forget the God moment was the woman said, "Just go to the end of your driveway and, you know, walk, a few hundred yards, and there's a meeting starting in about 15 minutes at I think it was the local VFW." So I took that as a God moment and made action. And that was the first meeting I went to. Bonnie went with me. I got my white chip there, and I haven't looked back since. And today I have 33 years sober. So
Wow.
that
Excellent.
was yeah.
Congratulations, Rob.
I appreciate. Well, it's not my doing as much as it's the power above me that's keeping me sober, and the fellowship. And it's a funny thing how that program works. It is all about the fellowship, and I fought that where I came up with this whole process of accepting and surrendering to not give in, but not give up, but give in. It was all about the property. It was all about the program. So I fought it for the first year, and that's when I became very depressed, and had multiple dark places, thoughts of suicide. And I really went through it in that first year. And so to answer your question, the long way is that's kind of what built that resilience, that whole process, and other things that have happened in my life as well, that I share in the book. But there's just it's life events. I call it the speed of life that come at you, and I had a number of them through the time of my life up to that moment. So I believe with all my heart that my resilience is what got me through the life event when Bonnie passed, and I had to take her off life support. So resilience is something we don't come into the world with. It's not a character trait. It's not something that we're born with, whether we're good or bad about it. We have to develop it. And the only way we develop it is to really accept these challenges. And there's certainly enough of them coming at us right now in the world today. So just being able to accept them and know that you're exactly where you need to be. You're experiencing those challenges, and they're here to make you stronger, not break you, is what I believe.
Yeah.
That's sort of how I got here, and then the whole thing dovetailed into what I'm doing now, which is speaking about that, and of course the physical intelligence, which is really what I'm passionate about. Yeah, so that's
You
it.
mentioned God moments, Rob.
Yeah.
Were you raised in the church? Were you raised in a religious family?
Well, I'm Boston Catholic, so yeah, you
Of
can kind of
course.
figure it out. Uh, and not and to even make it even more relatable, non-relatable, however you want to look at it, I was a church singer. So, in my childhood and my teens all the way to college, I went to probably 10 masses a weekend. I did, weddings and funerals, and I was trained classically, so I was in the church doing the high masses. I sang Latin and so forth. So I was always at the church, growing up. So yeah, so I would say that I was definitely brought up Catholic in that way.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Rob. I was raised in the church. I was forced to go. I mean, there was no choice. You went to
Yeah,
church. And
yeah,
I wouldn't say that I was religious or had the faith yet, but it planted the seeds that saved me, I think, during my really rebellious years,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I like to think of it as guardrails, at least it gave me some guardrails of what not to do. But
yeah. It's a good foundation.
yeah, it was a foundation. I didn't find faith until much later, but at least I, at least those seeds were planted early on.
Right, right. And I know you're a man of faith. In fact, you brought me to a faith breakfast in Atlanta. I don't know if you remember that. There,
With a high tech
like,
prayer ministry?
yeah, they had to be 2,000 people there. It was
Yeah.
you brought me there as a guest. I'll never forget that. It was a beautiful moment and a beautiful morning. But I've kind of gone through this transformation where I would say I'm more spiritual person, and I connect myself to the universe as
Hmm.
being the higher power, and we're all sort of here connected. That's sort of who I am now, right? So I'm very spiritual in that way.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. So going through your wife's passing, just traumatic death right in front of you. Um, then you carried on with your career. You didn't transition immediately into this new mission. What was going on there? Were you fighting it or just kind of figuring things out?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, before you met me, actually, you met me right about the time that and just after it happened. When I joined Splunk. So it's a concept of give versus get, or get versus give, and I do a talk about this as well. And prior to that life moment, I would have considered myself a get versus give kind of person. Now, look, I know that I was a good person inside, and I was a loving and giving person, but I mean that in a way of business.
Hmm.
I would go in to get the deal, get what's good for me, and not worry about giving back to the customer. And when that life event happened, a switch went off, and over a period of just a few months, I found myself transferring to a give versus get, and understanding what that meant. I became then obsessed with personal development and finding out again, why was I here? Who am I? There has to be a purpose for me somewhere here, because nothing made sense that happened to me. So if I'm here for a reason, I want to know what it is. So I went really inward, and I really, really went in to discover myself as a person, my soul. Why am I here? What's my purpose? And that's when everything changed. So when you started to meet me in my days at Splunk, I was very much living and breathing not only the servant leadership principles, but bringing the love into business, and the empathy and the emotional intelligence that people were talking about. But how were they actually activating it was a different thing. And I would actually talk about love in business. I would say I love you. I would say these kinds of things outwardly with my team, and I would build different cultures within the company that would thrive because of these different words I were using, and the different physiology that I showed up with, and what I focused on, and that was really key to me. And I learned that outside of technology and brought it in. And I started to really get back to my my new self, I guess, probably within about 8 to 10 months. And then after that, it was sort of a rocket ship for me. For the last decade of my career, I really started to get into my own self of who I really was. And I never was it was like I was a new person. And that's really, I was a new person. It was just who I was. I just wouldn't let it go, wouldn't let it in, wouldn't let it, manifest, if you will. So that's when things sort of took off. And then I started to realize the success I was having when I changed this whole perspective of give versus get, and be a servant, and really live that servant leadership principles. Just don't get up on an all hands and tell everybody to be a servant leader, which is what most people do now, even, right? And they talk about emotional intelligence, and it's a great all hands meeting, or an earnings call, or a great kickoff, and then no one knows even what to do with that. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But That's what happened to me. I sort of transformed into this a different person, and then I realized the success I was having, both emotionally and financially, was heads and tails above what I had done even the 30 years prior. So I started to look at the numbers. I started to look at what kind of things we did and how much success we had, and it blew it out of the water. The last 10 years, it was like, the last 30 years was like a little 10% of what I did.
Hmm.
When I saw that, then I realized that I was onto something where, okay, if I really want to give versus get, let's take it to the next level. I came back from my last assignment in London, and I asked the company to kind of sunset me off, where I didn't have to have a quota for a while. I had 40 years of quotas and, thousands of forecast meetings. So, I did that. I was able to, do that for Splunk for a couple of years. I was part of the onboarding, so I could bring some of this stuff to the new employees coming in to build that culture that was highly engaged. We still had that culture. So that's what I did, and then after that, it was time to leave. I retired, and this came to me as an opportunity, especially after the book when that did well. I decided to join sort of the masses of being on the speaker tour, and see if I could really make an impact in the next generation of leaders, both in life and business. And so that's what I'm doing now. Is I'm traveling around the world and spreading this message and trying to, you know shake the corporate executives and leaders to understand, you know, you need operational excellence and cadence and excellence. You need to forecast. You need to have mindfulness around shareholder value. Those are all things that are table stakes, and that if you don't have them, you shouldn't be there in the first place. But adding this new dimension, which I talk about, is something that gives you a career year, gives you a career job. It allows you to impact people's lives, that they never forget, and that's the legacy I want to leave.
You've got your book there behind you, Surrender to Your Adversity,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
which I
Thank
read
you.
when it came out, and I recommend it for everyone.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about what you mean by surrendering to your adversity.
Yeah, yeah. So I started to think about my first year in sobriety when I was really just suffering and just in a really dark, bad place. And when you're in that dark, bad place, and you're contemplating doing some things that to yourself and that would affect others, you start to figure out, like, okay, there's got to be something bigger here. I've got to figure out a way out of this hole. So I started to think about the program was all about surrendering, right? Being humble and getting on your knees and surrendering to higher power. And I started to really think about that word. And I talked to military people all around the world too as I researched for my book. And the real power of surrender is to not give up, but it's to give in. And that one word changed everything for me. And once I did that, the book just flowed out of me. And that was the beginning of the book, of saying, okay, what am I really trying to talk about here? And, it's the joke of, the Alcoholics Anonymous is for quitters, right? It's like, I hear it all the time. But the reality is we all surrendered, but we didn't give up. We gave in. And when I got that in my head, that's when everything changed. And then the book took off, and I came up with, three A's, the AAA formula to do that: accept first. And that's all about trading your expectations for acceptance. It's things we hear all the time. This is nothing new, right? If you're listening to any kind of personal development person, they're going to tell you about how, life's happening to you, for you, not to you, and you're going to get things in your time, and you be patient. It all makes sense. For me, it was about surrendering to trade those expectations for acceptance, meaning put it out in the universe, let the universe bring you what it wants to in its time. And you manifest that, right? You manifest what you want, but you don't focus on the time frame, because that's when people get in trouble. And you let the universe bring it to you when you're ready and when the universe wants you to have it. So that's how I got to that: surrender to give in, not give up, trade those expectations for acceptance. Everything changed. And then the second A was appreciate. And everybody thought I was crazy when I said that. And I'm like, well, hold on. Let me tell you what I'm talking about here. This is to appreciate your adversity or any kind of challenges you have, because you're going to learn from them if you lean into them. If you're fighting them, they're going to be even stronger. It's a battle of good and evil in some ways, right? So if you appreciate, then you're grateful. And what I learned in my now 12 years of studies of neuroscience and the brain and the body and what goes on inside of us is that if you are in a state of gratitude, the brain cannot process fear or anger.
It actually pushes
Truth
it
is,
out, Rob?
it absolutely pushes it out because the brain can only process one thing at a time, right? So if it is grateful, just think about it. If you sit there for a second and you're grateful about something, how can you possibly be angry? If you're grateful about something, how can you be in high anxiety or fear? The brain can't do it. There's so many studies about this, but it pushes out those two things that unfortunately we are seeing play out every day, all day. It's all about fear or anger. So if we can live in a state of gratitude, then the brain will be in that state. Now, look, at this is not perfection. I do this all day long, right? Speed of life. I'll say it again. Write it down. It's like, I mean, I think about this all the time. When speed of life comes at you, it's okay. Reset. Think of something you're grateful for. Think of a few things you're grateful for. When I was over in London during COVID, um, I had to leave that country over Zoom. I had to figure out a way to do that. I actually set up a daily, every morning, 7 a.m., a gratitude meditation that I would start on
Hmm?
Zoom.
Excuse
Anybody
me.
was welcome. Yeah, and we'd have all kinds of cool people join and join us for this whole gratitude exercise.
Yeah.
So it was a really cool thing to do and to pass on. And I knew that if I could get them in a state of gratitude,
Yeah.
especially during that time, then they wouldn't be in fear or anger. So they would start to live in faith versus fear, especially during COVID, where I had to leave that country. So that's the second one, the appreciation.
You
So
know,
if you do those two,
Rob, you
go
mentioning
ahead.
that, and this morning I read a Bible verse every morning, and just to start my day, and the one this morning was about, I can't remember which book it was in, but about not being anxious, and in all things praying to God with gratitude. I mean, it's
There you go.
exactly what you were just saying.
That's really cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool. And it's powerful. It's very powerful. And, I've learned to do that every day. It's like a 10-minute ritual that I do. And I think that a lot of people do it. And I think that more people have to do it. You hear it all the time. You think for a few things you're grateful for. And,
Yeah.
and
Journaling
again, fear
gratitude.
and anger.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's powerful. And once you do those two first steps, I believe in my heart that then you're able to, with a clear mind, in a peak state at that point, be able to kind of pull back and assess. The last day is to assess or take action, and that's to pull back, assess your options, and move forward with new purpose and new perspective. That's what the book's all about. It's just talking about those three steps that I took. What I didn't realize was even as a kid I was doing it, but I didn't know what it was. But my dad and my mom somehow instilled that into me, and that built my resilience muscle. So at the age, I was 52 when I lost Bonnie. I had that resilience, and I could be strong for my family and my friends, my community, and hey, even Splunk, right? I was able
Yeah.
to perform and do my job for my company that I loved so dearly at the time.
I don't know about you, but I feel like my parents did a much better job, intentionally or unintentionally, of allowing me to have those moments of pain. They just let me go out and experience life and then deal with it. And then I became a parent, and a lot of the parents in our generation, we became more helicopter parents and
Yeah,
trying to protect our kids from those moments,
yeah,
which doesn't allow them to build that resilience muscle at all.
right, right. And we're seeing this play out with the next generation coming up as well, where we're seeing that they don't have that resilience muscle because they again, we're not born with it. You have to develop it. And if you're not failing, I say fail fast, fail forward, however you want to say it, right? Failing is one of the best things you can do in life, I believe,
Yeah.
and it's something you're always going to learn from, and you shouldn't be afraid of. And I think that it's important that this next generation too coming up is going to feel a lot of that, and that's why we're getting all these issues with mental health. And COVID exacerbated that.
Hmm.
I talk openly about how COVID was a, medical pandemic, of course, and I'm sure you read that in my book. I say that we are now in a mental health pandemic. And that's I truly believe that. So what I'm doing now is really helping that cause to kind of get people to understand they can unleash and they can tap into the chemicals in their own body and they can change their own state. It's free. They don't have to go to a class, a therapist, or anything like that. They can actually do it internally in their own body and activate themselves. And so that's my mission now is to get out there and really teach people how to do this. And the neuroscience is all over this. We're just starting to listen to it. It's been there. I've been studying this for over 12 years, and it's always been there. But now people are starting to sort of, okay, what is this about? How can I do this? So I'm sort of a category one now, trying to get this message out. But I know I'm right on the edge of explosion, and I can't wait till that happens.
You've got the early adopters, I take it.
Yes, I do. I do. It's an early adoption because it's used to be woo woo. It's soft skills, however you want to put it. The reality is it's not a nice to have anymore. It's a need to have. Our cultures are going this way. Our engagements going backwards. Our collaboration, our trust. I say it a lot. The word grace. It's a big word for me, and we are not showing ourselves or others enough grace. And that is really what's happening. And that's why all these cultures are suffering. That's why you've got 70% of employees saying they've had some kind of episode of anxiety or depression in the last 12 months. That's why you have 52% of employees saying they're looking over their shoulder, trying to find the other job because they don't feel like they're part of a purpose or part of something bigger themselves. Those numbers are staggering. You put that together with the workforce in the next 20 years that it's not really going to explode, right? Population's going down. Companies are going to be in trouble. And they have to act now to make sure that they engage those employees and that they make them part of something bigger than themselves. And they just don't say that in an all hands meeting. They actually live it and breathe it. So that's what I'm doing. And that's why it's so cool to be out here doing that now.
And
Having a blast.
Rob, this physical intelligence, let's dive into
Yeah.
that. But can this
Yes.
help the generation that didn't have the same resilience building?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So all over the world, I'm speaking to businesses, and I get that. But I also give a lot back to the next generation. And I'm also working with high schoolers. I work with middle schoolers. I'm in front of kids as much as I can because I want to give them these skills too, to build that resilience and to build that endurance and to build that strength and that flexibility. Those are four quadrants of, as we say, or four movements in the physical intelligence practice. And we think of them differently because right away your head goes to the gymnasium, and you don't have to be physical to do these things. You can actually be in a wheelchair if you have to, and or sitting in a chair, and you can still activate these chemicals and these hormones naturally in your body. So yes, the next generation is absolutely going to benefit from this, and I'm trying to get in front of as many as I can.
Can you give us a mini lesson on those four quadrants? I'm fascinated.
Yeah, everybody wants that. I know we're kind of sitting in a studio here.
Yeah.
You're usually standing up and everything else, but there are four major quadrants to the Physical Intelligence Institute, and the first one is the strength, and it starts in the feet. It's actually all around the feet, and we can measure this. We can measure this with some questions we ask. We can also measure with wearables and where these chemicals are in our body, whether they're low or high. I'm working with all the neuroscientists that we're getting into the wearables where we can start to really like real time see these body movements activate these chemicals. So in the feet, the feet is the endorphins that are released, right? That's the strength of overcoming adversity or making sure that you're building those values and that you're going through those limited beliefs as you're getting your goals. And that's really just the winner pose. I'm sure I say be a starfish. So,
Yeah.
if people that are listening, just imagine a starfish and for me, I'm from Boston. I've won the Boston Marathon, right? My hands are up. Right. So it's that winner pose, real simple to do. Right. I say, and if you've seen my content, go into LinkedIn, I do a lot of videos, just short videos of how to do these body movements. And so that's the feet. And then it goes up to the gut, which is serotonin. And that's the happy and the engaged and the grace for others and the collaboration in meetings. And that's a simple twist of the body. And that twist of the body releases that serotonin in the gut.
Got to get this
Yeah.
going.
It's just a simple twist. And it's funny. You get 1,000 people in a room doing this, and they're all laughing and giggling.
Yeah.
And it's funny. You can't do that and not smile, and you're smiling yourself. And
Yeah.
and so that's the serotonin twist, we call it, and it's real easy to activate activate that serotonin for flexibility. So we're gonna be showing more grace. We're gonna be open to new ideas. We're gonna demonstrate a growth mindset. Those kinds of things, right? Make sense? And then we get to the heart, which is my favorite, the love hormone, which is oxytocin. Now, a lot of people know oxytocin, and they know sort of a little bit about it, but it is the love hormone, and I love that, and I talk about that, and that's wonderful. But when I talk about it in business, I talk about it not as your partner or your wife or your spouse or whatever. It's really the ability to be open and honest with yourself and others, to have grace and collaboration again, and to show love and empathy, and to activate emotional intelligence. You do this by doing the Kate Winslet. So you remember the Titanic. It's just being on the top of the Titanic, and your hands are out, your head's up, and that oxytocin's going across your heart. And you see how cool these things are. This is what I do sort of in my keynote talks. I just do a few movements just to get them thinking about it. There's about 104 movements total, but these are the fun ones, right? So I get the Titanic, I play the music. It's hilarious. And again, people are connected to this, and they feel that chemical oxytocin go through their heart. They can feel it, and they are absolutely moved by it. In some cases, very emotional about it. So I see how it moves people. And then the head, which is the endurance, is the dopamine. So we're on a dopamine cortisol seesaw. Everybody is. It's multi-generational. And it's we're down high cortisol, fight or flight, fight or flight, fight or flight. Oh my God, I gotta survive. You call people up, how you doing? I'm just trying to get to Friday. Yeah, this is cortisol, right? How it plays out. You need a little cortisol, but we're running on a full tank of cortisol. Then we go to dopamine, right? So we go into our Facebook hits, ding, 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 Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm from Boston. I go to pasta. I'm a pasta guy. That's my dopamine. I go into food, right? I used to be an alcohol, right? That was my dopamine. So what I'm doing now is I'm telling people how and teaching people how to release good dopamine. And good dopamine is in the head, in the brain. And that's all about manifesting your goals. So I get them through a process where they manifest, and they think of their goals as they've already happened, and they step into those goals, and they have that bright light come down in their head, and that dopamine is activated, and they're living their best life already. And they've already reached their goal, their best life. And whatever that goal is, they've accomplished it. How do they feel? Who are they with? These are all the things I do. So I get that body movement, and I get that emotions tied to it. Because the more emotions we tie to something like that, the more it's going to happen. So that's PI in a nutshell. And it's all about tapping into the chemicals that are in your body, and then unleashing them for good, unleashing them and making sure that you can activate those things that matter. So for business, it's leaders being able to start meetings with some of these movements. I know Google, Microsoft, Zappos, Amazon, they're all starting to do similar things like this. They're not calling it PI because a lot of people don't even know what it is. It's in Europe. There's nobody doing it over here except me in the U.S. But they're doing something like it. And I'm okay with that, because as long as they're activating individuals and they're igniting what's inside them, meetings are better, the collaboration, innovation is better. Now, the CEO of Microsoft was in Fortune. He said, investors are investing now in CEOs that have demonstrated emotional intelligence, not just talked about it. So money is involved, right? Engaged cultures are 20, 22, 24% more profitable per Gallup. Studies are coming out. So when I talk to a CEO, it's like, you don't want to be 22% more profitable? You can't say no to that. And this is one way to do it. You have to have an engaged culture. And that's what we're missing right now. If I talk to hundreds and hundreds of people in different levels as you do, and most people are like just trying to get through the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so
And
busy. I'm so
that's
busy. Yeah.
yeah, and that's what hurts me. I suffer for. I don't want that. And I feel moved by that. I want to fix that. I
Yeah.
want to change that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to sum it up, Rob, we've got the victory starfish. We've got the twist. We've got the Kate Winslet on the Titanic. and then the brain dopamine, is there a physical movement there?
It's not It's not physical, it's manifesting those goals, and
Okay.
we should be doing that, and we should be doing that every day. I don't know if you can see it. I've got my vision board that I do.
Yeah.
I do one every year, every quarter. So it's one of those things where if you're manifesting, and a lot of people believe manifest, every morning you do your meditation. I manifest all day. I make it part of a practice. So if I could be, walking on the beach manifesting, I could be in my car driving, turn the radio off and manifest your goals as high, as if you've already accomplished them, and manifest those goals and be silly about it. Manifest things that you would like imagine you could never in your whole life imagine, right? I want to buy a Lamborghini. I want 3 Lamborghinis with a 5 year, whatever. I want to be this. I want to climb this. I want to do this. Be silly about it and put those out there, and the universe will it will reward you. I've seen it over and over again in my life too. I've had so many. My wife's always like, "Okay, can you stop just manifesting for a little bit? And let me just slow down for a second, because everything's moving. We're going all kinds of different ways, and we're getting so many gifts from the universe, and taking advantage of them and passing them on to others."
I hadn't planned to ask you this, Rob, but I want to, because it's just coming to mind. I
Yeah, sure.
interviewed a gal, Louise McAvoy. She's a mountaineer, business executive, but also climbs Everest and the tallest mountains. And she brought up something that is real. It's called like the adventure blues or expedition blues or something like that. So what she described is you get so amped up, you're doing all your training, you're getting ready, you got a totally strict regimen to go climb Everest or whatever mountain. You climb it, you're successful, but you get done and you're just deflated
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you had all the dopamine and adrenaline, but then it's gone. And she says until she finds her next purpose, you know,
I was gonna say that's it right there. Yeah.
right? But that could be a big gap because now she's going to climb Denali again, make the third attempt on Denali. But um, you've got this span, and how do you shorten that time span of disappointment, even though you achieved what you set out to achieve?
Well, that's that what she just described. That gap is so easy to fill because um, that's her identity, what she does. But that may not necessarily be her purpose, my opinion. So, when I speak on stage and I come down and there's a week in between or something like that, I don't get those blues because that's what I do. That's how I portray my message. But my purpose guides me, and there's only so many things I can do with my purpose to give back to others and to spread that message. There's all kinds of ways that I can do that. So I don't have those gaps because reality is that's not so much my purpose. It's just how I manifest my purpose. My purpose is to make human connections, live in a state of gratitude, right? And pass on this message to impact the next generation of leaders in life and business. That says nothing about my next speech or whether it's a week or a month away. I can live that purpose all day long, every day, and I won't get those blues. So that's my that's what I do, right? So that's how I do it. I don't identify my purpose with my events. I identify my purpose with my true values and what I want to do here on earth.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it, Rob. And you think about, and you hear all the time, and you meet people who, you know, want to achieve a certain financial goal or achieve a certain title at work, and they get it, and they're just deflated. It's not bringing them the happiness that they thought, but that wasn't their
No,
purpose.
no, it's not their purpose. It's not why they're here. It's not their why. It's not, there's so much deeper, right? And even when I coach people or I talk to people afterwards, it's, I'll ask them what their why is. And the first two, three, four, five, six, seven, that's not what they are. It's not their why. And they have to really go deep down and they have to really find out what their why really is. And that's the real important part. And we all have to get there. It's a lot of work. It's not easy. And I've been doing it for a long time and I'm still practicing. I'm not good at, I'm the best as I can be, but, and I'm in it all day long. But if you're, working and you're doing this and you got kids and you're single, whatever, single mom or whatever, it's hard to sit down and go, okay, what's my purpose? But that's why I say, at least do this for yourself. Be a student of your game, not who you're working for or who you're with, or be a student of your game. And if you change that mindset, a lot of things will come to you. There'll be seminars that may come to you, podcasts that may come to you. See, if we have to open our hearts up for this stuff, right? So we always say, "Oh yeah, well, what's well, I don't really have the time, or I don't know who to go to, or I don't know." But if you actually sit down and you actually put it out in the universe and say, "I really want to be a student of my game. I want you to bring things to me that I can be at a different state. I can be at a higher plane. I can vibrate at a different level." You say it every day. You say it every day, every day. All of a sudden, you're going to get, there'll be something that comes up on your Facebook. Hey, look at this podcast. Well, what's that? The universe is going to give you what you want, and I truly believe that. So, my story, to end all stories with that, is I was part of the Tony Robbins family for about 9 years, and got to meet him. I spoke at one of his events, Business Mastery, a few years ago, and got to really, meet a lot of cool people. And so when I first got in there a couple of years, I said, I would love to tell Tony, the big guy, my story if I ever had a chance, because he does that. He'll call on people, and I said, I really would love to do that. So I started to be intentional about it, and I started to manifest this, and I started to visualize it like it already happened. I started to feel the emotions I would feel when I was in that moment. And I did this for several years without it happening. And I kept doing it, and I kept doing it, and I kept doing it. So I went to an event a couple of years ago, and he was wrapping up on a Sunday night. He was heading back. He was heading off stage. It was one more person to speak, and I was a couple in the aisle, and there's a guy in front of me. He stood up. This guy had been like, I think he was 6'8". I'd never seen a guy that big in my life except Tony. Right? He was huge. So it was basically I was more. There's no way anybody could see me, and I sat back and I said, "This is not my time. I will continue to manifest in the universe, and I will be here when you give it to me." And Tony looked right past that 6'8" guy and called on me. You tell me. I don't know how he saw me. I don't know how he made that happen, but he called on me. I stood up. I told him my story. He ran over, gave me a bear hug, kissing me, hugging me. I love you, brother, the whole bit. Had an amazing moment with Tony. And I sat back down and I said, "This stuff's real. This stuff is real. So how do I bring this into business and get people to realize that? How do I bring this into life and get people to realize that? Instead of going on Facebook and putting your posts up and the pictures and the videos, how about we live? How about we live for others? How about we give back? How about we live in a state of gratitude? How about we do all this for ourselves and for others? Because if we're in a peak state, then we can bring others to that peak state. This is what I'm hoping I did for you today. I hope I at least gave you a little bit about what it means to be in that peak state, what it means to me to give back. And I hope your listeners will hear that even through the video. I hope they feel that presence of me, that I'm here for them, and I hope that I imparted something, anything that they can take back to their family, their church, their community, their business, and be in that peak state.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. I think you did, and I think we will. Before I let you go, though, I've got to subject you to my rapid fire round.
Okay. Oh boy. Okay.
Right.
Here we go.
So this is your Kate Winslet moment, or your starfish moment. All right.
Yeah.
What is one word that describes you in a storm?
In a storm.
A storm of
resilient.
life. Resilient.
Resilient.
Good. That's a good answer.
Yeah. I would hope I would say that.
I'm curious how you'll answer this one, because we've talked a lot about this, but is there one failure that taught you the most?
I think it was the alcoholism, the fact that I could not handle just one or two, and that I was unable to control that. And there were many failures that came with that through that process, whether it was loss of time or things that I will never, ever get back. And that I believe that's a huge failure. Yeah.
Did you go legally blind at some point during that?
Yeah, I did. I did. Yeah, I've got a lot of stories, but yeah, I had keratoconus disease, crazy. And over a period of about a year and a half, 2 years, I was legally blind. I was a month away from losing my license as a salesperson in a car traveling, company to company. And I got on the donor list. And yeah, so I've had two transplants. I've had two transplants and doing fine.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. I think I know the answer to this one, but this will just reinforce it. What's your morning routine in a few words?
Intentional.
Intentional.
That's really it. It's intentional. Yeah, I'll do meditation. I do cold plunge. I do red light.
Do you?
I move my body. Yeah, I do a lot of yoga, a lot of Pilates. I'm not a gym rat where I'm building muscle. I'm not that guy. I'm 65 years old. I don't need to be jumped up, jacked up. I want to be flexible. That's where I know I can have the most benefit, especially when I'm on stage. I'm moving a lot, I'm jumping a lot, I'm dancing a lot. So I have to have that energy. So that's how I get my energy. That's what I do.
Do you
But
cold
intentional
plunge?
is the word.
Do you cold plunge every day?
Every moment,
Do you?
every day. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Good for
yeah,
you.
yeah.
I might do that every
It's
10
good.
years.
It's good for the body to shiver, you know?
Yeah, that's what I've read.
Again, once you get into that cold plunge, you're in fight or flight. So then you're building resilience. You're building resilience. You're
Yeah,
building resilience. People don't look at it like that, but that's exactly what's going on. Social media will tell you, oh, I was in 40 degrees for 20 minutes. Hey, we weigh you. That's great. It's not a competition. You don't need to do that. You could be in fight or flight for 3 to 4 minutes at a low temperature, and your body is going to build that resilience every time. That's another
interesting.
way of building it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, a follow on it. What's the most important thing you do every day? Is it the cold plunge or is there something else that's the most important daily ritual?
I make living in a state of gratitude non-negotiable. That's what I do
Is it something you're thinking about not just in the morning when you're journaling, but trying to think about it all day long? Is that what you mean?
all day, all day,
Yeah,
all day. And if I'm, uh, and I think when I'm in that moment, I can impact people's lives, even in the line at Starbucks. You know, I believe if somebody makes eye contact with me, then the universe is telling me I need to say hello and smile. And that's being grateful for that person, and that's what I do. So look out if you're at Starbucks and you look at me, um, make sure, be ready for a smile, a handshake, or a hug.
have you trained yourself so that when the things happen, like the guy cuts you off or pulls into your parking spot? I'm thinking of that country song, Some Beach, the guy in the Mercedes Benz whips right in. Are you finding the
Yeah.
gratitude
Yeah.
even in those tough moments?
I give myself 90 seconds to be pissed off. I guess that's a good way of saying it. But, I have a 90-second rule, and I think after that, it's just silly. It's silly because, that person doesn't know you, doesn't know you're upset, and you're just taking space in your own brain that you don't need. So, yeah, I've had those moments. Yeah, I have them all the time. But I give myself 90 seconds, and
You
usually
know,
I can beat it.
you moved out of Boston, but you can't completely take the Boston out of you.
No, you can't. I still park the car. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome, Rob. I knew I was going to enjoy this conversation, and we've talked kind of around the outskirts of this, but haven't had a chance to dive so deep into it. So, really appreciate you sharing this. You're on this new mission to transform people's lives.
Thank you, my friend, and thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Is there one last piece of advice? Is there like one core piece of advice you want to give listeners?
Yeah, and I get that question a lot, and my answer is very simple. Please, if nothing else, give yourself grace and give others grace as well as you go through your day.